A progressive candidate just knocked out the Democratic establishment's pick, survived a $65 million spending onslaught against him, and won anyway. Now he has to do something even harder, win a swing state in November. This is the story of Abdul Al-Sayyid's win and why it might be the biggest test progressives face this fall. So let's start with just how tight this race was. Abdul Al-Sayyid narrowly beat Congresswoman Haley Stevens in Michigan's Democratic Senate primary. The Associated Press didn't even call it until the morning after election night, with Al-Sayyid's ahead by just 1 point. Once 99% of bailouts were counted, and this was not fair fight on paper. Al-Sayyid overcame nearly 65 million in outside spending working against him, plus a late endorsement of Stevens from popular Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, widely seen as a last-ditch move to stop his momentum. He won anyway. So, who is this guy? Al-Sayyid is a former public health official. He was actually the runner-up to Whitmer herself in the 2018 Democratic gubernatorial primary. This time he ran on universal health care and rejecting corporate donations, and he pulled together a coalition of national progressive figures: Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and fundraising help from former Vice President Kamala Harris. He also picked up a meaningful labor endorsement from the United Auto Workers, a significant union in a stage bet on the auto industry. On the flip side, his campaign was not without controversy. His decision to rally alongside live streamer Hassan Baker drew criticism even from within his own party during the primary. There was a third candidate too, State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who dropped out but stayed on the bailout, polling 4%, only 4% of the vote, and throwing her endorsement behind Al-Sayyid's after the pact. Here's why the headline calls this a test rather than a victory lap. Al-Sayyid now has to unite a Democratic Party that was genuinely divided during this primary. Stevens had the backing of the establishment, including Whitmer, retiring Senator Gary Peters, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. So, to his credit, Stevens conceded gracefully and urged Democrats to rally around Al-Sayyid, warning that Republicans and Trump wants us to come out of this primary tired and divided. That's a notable, mature reaction, but the underlying tensions it's peppering over is real. And here's the number that should worry Democrats. One recent independent poll found Al-Sayyid and his Republican opponent Mike Rogers essentially tied in a hypothetical matchup, while Stevens and McMorrow were each shown beating Rogers by a few points. In other words, some polling suggests Al-Sayyid might actually be the weaker general election candidate of the three, even though he won the primary. And the stakes here go way beyond one state. Michigan is widely seen as a must-win for Democrats if they want any real shot at flipping control of the Senate this November. Al-Sayyid will face Mike Rogers, a former congressman who narrowly lost a Senate bid back in 2024 and ran unopposed for the Republican nomination this time, meaning Republicans are already fully unified behind their candidate, while Democrats are still working to heal from a bruising primary. Trump himself weighed in, calling Al-Sayyid wins great news for the Republican Party, which tells you Republicans think a more progressive nominee gives them a real opening in a state that's usually a tight toss-off anyway. So a real grassroots win against enormous establishment spending. But now Al-Sayyid has to prove progressives can actually win swing states in November, not just Democrat primaries. This race could end up being one of the clearest data points yet on how far left the party can go and still win nationally. I'll be tracking this on all the way to November. Subscribe if you want the updates and let me know in the comments, do you think El-Sayyid can unite the party in time? See you in the next one.